Good evening and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Hamza Idris. Tonight, two major political flashpoints are in focus: Nigeria's electoral credibility and the deepening crisis inside the main opposition party. First, civil society organizations are mobilizing across the country with protests in Abuja and Lagos over the Senate's decision on the electronic transmission of election results. The groups argue that allowing INEC to decide the mode of result transmission instead of making real-time electronic transfer mandatory weakens transparency and opens the door to disputes in future elections. That growing standoff has triggered an emergency session of the Senate where lawmakers are expected to revisit the controversial clause. Labor unions have warned they will resist any move to see us rolling back electoral transparency with threats of nationwide protest already on the table. To break this down, we'll be joined by frontline civil society leader and former member of the House of Representatives, Ambassador Toyo, who speaks on why activists say this moment is critical for Nigeria's democracy. And later in the program, we turn to the renewed battle for control of the People's Democratic Party. Tensions are rising between the camp linked to former Minister Kabiru Turaki and forces loyal to the Federal Capital Territory Minister Wike, as both sides position for influence within the party's national leadership. An attempt by the Wike-aligned faction to open the PDP-sealed National Secretariat was blocked following the intervention of the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Ebetekun, adding another layer of drama to the struggle. We'll get perspective from the PDP chieftain Umar Sani, also known as the Khat, as he weighs in on the latest round of hostilities and what it means for the party's future. But before the commencement of the program, we have a rundown of serious events in the polity.
Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 election, Peter Obi, says Nigerians will not accept glitches in the future elections. Obi spoke while leading supporters and civil society groups to the National Assembly to demand real-time electronic transmission of results from polling units to the INEC result viewing portal, IREB. The call comes as lawmakers debate amendments to the Electoral Act 2022. The Senate will reconvene to consider the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. A notice issued by the Clerk of the Senate, Emmanuel Odo, has raised expectations that lawmakers may revisit disputed sections of the bill. The Senate had earlier retained the existing Electoral Act 2022 provision on result transmission, despite pressure from civil society groups and opposition parties pushing for mandatory real-time electronic transmission. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has upheld the Senate suspension of Kogi Central Senator Natasha Apoti-Oduan. The court ruled that the Senate has the authority to discipline its members and said her fundamental rights were not violated as she claimed. Justice Ababella Mohammed, deliberating judgment, referred to Section 66, subsection 4 of the Senate Standing Rules, which empowers the Senate to take disciplinary steps to maintain order during proceedings. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu has described United States intervention in Nigeria as a blessing. Speaking in an interview with Fox News in Washington, D.C., she addressed global criticism over insecurity, alleged attacks on Christians, and recent U.S. airstrikes on militant targets. She said the growing international attention is helping to spotlight Nigeria's challenges and ongoing reforms.
Shafiu Suleiman there with some major national issues in the polity. Next is State of the Nation with Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed.
National resistance against what appears to be resistance or attempts by the National Assembly to limit the reforms they are undertaking around the Electoral Act appear to be spreading to a point where the nation really needs to be alarmed, either by the scale of the resistance by the people or by the efforts by the administration to dig in and threaten the 2027 elections. This is a very serious issue, more serious, in fact, than just simply the integrity and the credibility of the 2027 elections. It has to do with the very essence of our democratic process. In simple terms, the National Assembly has had 3 years to revisit and amend and improve the legal framework under which the 2027 elections will be conducted. A lot of issues have come up. There appears to be some work in some areas, but the single most important reform that Nigerians had hoped that the National Assembly will undertake is to legalize and enforce the real-time transmission of results. If this happens, it will mitigate a huge amount of the weaknesses of our electoral system. It basically says that voters queue up, they get accredited, they're given polling cards, they press a button, and their votes are transmitted directly to INEC's viewing portal. It bypasses a huge number of steps which constitute threats to the credibility and the votes of people. Now, ordinarily you would think a reform-minded administration like Tinubu's administration will say, we've got all the governors, we've got all the legislature, we've got everybody. We've actually won the elections even with a year to go. So we don't need to tamper or to limit the manner in which the 2027 elections will be conducted. You'll be wrong. The National Assembly appears to be coming up with reason after reason after reason why they will not allow real-time transmission of results, so that Nigerians can have a little bit more confidence that what the people or the party they vote for will, in the end, be counted. Whether they win elections or not is not the real issue. It is that in democracy, voters must freely choose who they want. And you count the votes, and you decide who wins an election. So it's important that the administration recognizes the magnitude and the depth of feeling of Nigerians on this issue. If, as we hear, the government or the National Assembly is worried about availability of power or the reliability of communication facilities, if they allow real-time transmission, that's a simple answer: fix it. If the fortune of the APC in the 2027 elections, APC administration, depends on power and communications facilities, most Nigerians have no doubt they would have addressed that issue. So, in simple terms, fix the electoral process by allowing real-time transmission of elections, or the nation will find consistent resistance and noise and pressure. More than that, it could actually jeopardize the entire credibility of the 2027 elections. A final point. For those Nigerians who are thinking of boycotting the 2027 elections with real-time transmission or not, don't contemplate it. Go out, register, and vote. Don't give those who want you to boycott the elections so that they vote and get an administration that has deprived you of the right to change the administration, if that is what you want to do, simply because you are angry enough to say, I will not vote. Thank you.
Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed there with State of the Nation. And right here in the studio is a former member of the House of Representatives, Ambassador Toyo.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're also a member of the Movement for Credible Elections. Yes. When I saw the roll call of members of that group, I said the gathering storm is becoming severe. Today, serious protests at the National Assembly. Were you there, or you were at the other side for the World Press Conference by the Movement for Credible Elections?
We did a World Conference today in Lagos where we stated our position, and we came up with a 12-point agenda on what our expectations are.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we all have cough, you know. Yeah. Yes, it's the weather.
So that's what happened in Lagos, but I think tomorrow we'll be picking up here in Abuja.
Okay. Sorry. Talking about the whole problem revolves around Section 60 of the Electoral Act, if I'm right, 60 subsection 3, which will compel presiding officers to transmit results to INEC IREF portal in real time. Is that possible?
I don't see why not. I don't see why not. We're going to confront problems here and there in the source, which is normal with every situation like that. But I think it's not, I'm sorry.
So no problem? Or can we get water for you?
Maybe that will help.
Please, we'll go on a short break and we will return in a moment. Welcome back. We still have in the studio Ambassador Toyo, former member of the House of Representatives and member Movement for Credible Election. Before we went on the short break, I asked, the contention is clause 60 subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, which compels, presiding officers to, upload results on IREF. Yeah. How possible could that be?
Well, like I said, I started saying I don't think that we should be thinking in terms of impossibility. In Nigeria today, we know that the depth of our use of technology has been greatly enhanced. We are in a position where if you do not have access to the internet in any location, within 30 to 1 hour from that particular location, you can access one of our many platforms which we have. And so I guess that what this tells me is that instead of trying to deal with the problem, we're now using the problem as a reason for not dealing with it, So that in itself is problematic. And I think from that perspective, nobody should be supporting the argument that technology or whatever it is the problem. The question is, we have a whole 1 year between now and the next election. Are we saying that as a country it's impossible for us to address some of those areas because it's not all over the country, it's limited to some parts of the country? Is it impossible for us to do something or create alternative ways in which we can access some form of internet or some form of digital technology across the country? I think there's a way and a means around it. If you ask the military the kinds of hardware they use to get information into some of these very difficult areas where they're operating from, I'm sure they'll be able to say to you, look, there's alternative technology that can access them. And I think we, as a country, should not be afraid of finding what we can do to supplement.
We had a lot of challenges after the 2023 election, revolved around the transmission of the result. And many of the candidates at the national and subnational levels, they all went to court, challenging the validity of the results declared on pretext that the presiding officers in some places were unable to upload the result real time. Almost 3 years now, nothing done. And why do you think the National Assembly was reluctant all this while? Wow. Because everything revolves around them. But now look at, we are racing against time.
Well, it's a lot of conjectures can be made here. Why did they wait this late? Did they not see the difficulties we had in 2023? Did they not see the fact that we had a technological glitch? Up till now, nobody has explained. Well, the thing about it that makes me even a bit curious is that the main problem we had in 2023 looked like, and I said looked like because I cannot establish that it was a man-made problem when something was turned off or something stopped working, as different from the fact that what we're saying today is that, we can't do it because we don't have the technology. With the technology we had as at 2023, we used it in a different way. We stopped the technology from working, if you remember. This is the accusation on the ground. And nobody, whether INEC or in the state, has been able to tell us that what they referred to as a glitch was not actually a deliberate interference with the results.
I think in one of their interactions, INEC said that, especially for the presidential election, it was overloaded in terms of the uploading, in terms of people trying to follow and see what was happening, and then the system now
remember that
collapsed.
It only collapsed for the presidential.
Because yes,
but the other elections that happened on the same day.
Well, they said, for instance, for the House of Reps, if we are in the same constituency or you are constituency A, you are bothered about that. I may not necessarily have interest in your constituency, so I concentrate on my constituency. I just want to say that this was what they said, even though it didn't carry the weight that it can convince generality of Nigerians. But then still, talking about the National Assembly, if you look at it now, the storm basically is at the Senate. You served in the National Assembly. Why are we always having problems with the Senate instead of the House of Representatives, or instead of having collective problems from the two houses?
Well, there are Nigerians who will tell you that the Senate is a retirement space for the more senior and politically exposed elite, who have actually been exposed to the various dimensions of the discussion we are having, whether it's in terms of the use of technology or the rigging of the elections or whatever forms of things. And so they have become a sort of very invested elite class. And the turnover in the Senate is much less than the turnover in the House of Representatives. So you tend to see that the composition of the House of Reps will have new infusion of people and ideas, which tends to make it a little bit more radical than what you see in the Senate. The Senate tends to be more conservative, more given to people who have been ex-governors, ex-ministers, and things like that. And these are people who have had a significant stake in the kind of politics that Nigeria has been exposed to, and tend to see any attempt at changing what they are familiar with as being an attempt to make their powers, that make them less powerful than they should be.
Now, talking about the demands now by key stakeholders, including some members of the National Assembly, because even within the senators, they are somehow divided. Some believe that they made provision for this live transmission. While Akpabio, what we had, he said it categorically, that it is actually a recipe for chaos if they allow this law to be entrenched in the documents.
I really don't know from what perspective he's talking about. Only yesterday, I think the Society for Engineers in Nigeria, a body of very senior members of the engineering profession, came across with a paper, with a press release, clearly debunking or disagreeing with all the points that were made as to the state of our technology and its capability to address the real-time transmission of results from polling units. A lot of that has been basically debunked, I would say, and I think the fears that are being expressed, which in themselves could be legitimate. And to be honest with you, I think the point Akpabio makes also raises other points, and the question is, why did we wait now? Okay, we have waited this long. Are we saying that between now and next year, whatever fears and concerns Akpabio has highlighted cannot be addressed by a willing, politically willing government to see that at least between now and the year, we get all our kinds of technological impediments cleared out of the way, and that we're in a position to deliver on the technology. So his arguments are what taken into account.
So we should look at the message, not the messenger.
Yeah,
in a way. Is that what you are saying? Yes,
absolutely. I'm saying that, and I'm saying that if there is something in the message, there is enough time between now and next year to have that resolved, and that should therefore not be a reason for stopping.
When some of us studied even the transmission of the result during the last election cycle, I mean the general election in 2023, I was appalled because what I saw there is just what was filled, in the papers that you upload. Yeah. Not that while results are being you now impute them.
But there is also...
Is that an end in itself?
Well, there is... Again, these are all problems we need to actually deal with. What the real-time transfer is saying is the collated result at the polling units. Yes. It's not everybody who votes, it's transmitted.
It gets there.
No, that's not what it is. It is at the end of everybody's collation, that from EC 8A is uploaded
yes.
and sent out of the into this thing. Where you see it being mutilated, you will know that there is a deliberate attempt at somebody doing something. The degree of mutilation sometimes is very appalling. And what we are hoping that real-time transmission will do is that everybody, the agents and everybody, will be seated there and watch the process of this transmission. We don't also want to stop there at the process of just trusting the technology. We also want to be able to audit the technology itself that has gone. Are we sure that what was transmitted went straight to the IREF, for example? We need to have all of those guarantees as well. So, but the first point starts with let there be transmission and let there be real-time transmission. The quarrel and the disagreement over real-time shouldn't be, from my own perspective, an issue which should stop us from passing the law. We should pass the law and anticipate that the resources available to the INEC, if given more powers, they can resolve a lot of the areas which we think have difficulties.
Okay, when those who had some issues with the results of last season went to court, both INEC, winners, and security agents and all that, they had window of, giving reasons as to why it was not uploaded live. And, judges relied on that. Now, in the event you have this as a law, don't you think at the end of the day we may not even have election in 2027? Because after the election, anybody who goes to court and said that it was not uploaded, you know what that
One
means.
of the things the people who are in technology have told me is evidence which is provided by technology is different from evidence which is provided by paper. The courts have tended to be able to say, where is your proof? And your proof is a piece of paper that says, this is my form EC8A. The reason that is so is that the judges can look at it. But with technology, a lot of changes can take place and still look like exactly nothing was tampered with. So the moment technology becomes faulted in one form or the other, it generates its own problems, you understand? It generates its own problems and people can call it to question. But the good thing about technology is that it's got a way of also storing its own stories, you understand? If you go to the, the POS, and they give you your money, and the printout comes, you find all the information as to what that is about. So same thing with technology. Once you have the capability to have those printouts done from what was transmitted, I guess that we then begin to ask the question, where did the problem come? And don't forget, the real transmission is about transmission from the polling unit. Collations will still happen. Collations do not happen using the technology. Collations happen using the aggregation of that which has already gone into the IREF. You know, at the point, because that's where the problem begins to start. When people are moving from the polling unit to the ward collation center, a lot of things are tampered with. So if you had transmitted at the polling unit, by the time you come to the collation, you are asking for that which was transmitted. And the technology allows you to see what has been transmitted as it relates to that.
Well,
so
are we going to see anything new tomorrow from the Senate? Do you think at the end of the day this emergency sitting will produce any positive result in line with expectations of Nigerians?
It may not give us all that we want, because like we in the movement for the credible election talked about things like defections, we talked about non-interference with the internal working of the party.
But basically on the transmission of
But on the transmission, I have a very strong sense that the country is at a tipping point, and that, like Dr. Baba Ahmed said, to ignore this may be very dangerous. You know, to ignore it may be very dangerous. There is a genuine anger, very much, for many reasons. Why did we wait this late? Why are we treating something so important as though it is not important? This is at the core of the elections in 2027, and it's not just about political parties and the opposition, which people talk about. The opposition is not happy. These are disgruntled politicians coming out to make their cases. It's a clarion call that brings everybody together. There is hardly any part of the country. So far, we've had The Bar Association has issued, Society for Engineers have issued, the Labour Union has issued, several bodies have issued, all in support of the use of real-time transmission of results from the polling units. So what I'm saying in effect is that the country has to be careful here. And I believe that we have a National Assembly, notwithstanding its own personal interests, which has largely driven the way it had looked at this problem. It's going to take a few steps back to say, are we really safe here? If we ignore this, do we know what is likely to play out in the future? And for all you care to know, this may start as a 1, 2, 3 day demonstration, and it snowballs into many other things. And I think it's in the interest of the country and its leadership that something is done to address this. This is not a new call. It's been around for far, far too long. As a matter of fact, before the 2023 elections, we heard that everything was in place under the Buhari government for this result, no ambiguity to be resolved. But at the very dying moments, people moved around and made sure it didn't get the kind of legal backing we wanted to see. That was 2022, that was 2023. I think people have learned very hard lessons from 2023, and they're not going to ignore the hard lessons.
Okay, I have just 1 minute, and in fact, I'm just adding it for you because we have another program. But I want you to now talk to the president, because some people believe that everything stops at the table of Mr. Tinubu. What will you tell him in respect to this?
I will remind him of his history, his personal history. I'll remind him of the fact that in many of the times when we were doing NADECO, when he was doing NADECO, many of us in the pro-democracy movement stood with him, stood with the voices against the military, and that was because we felt and agreed and believed that he too believed in the credibility of our democratic systems. We fought together for him and all other persons to see the return of Nigeria to democracy. We cannot at this point in time forget his personal history, forget what he has done with colleagues across the country to see that democracy is entrenched in the country. And not just in the country, like Obasanjo used to say when he was president, across Africa. If you remember, there were so many coups up until around the same time that we moved into the democratic system. And the whole decline in coup systems across the world was something that was noticeable at the time. So this failure to address this may also rekindle something else that we have forgotten. It's already here with us in West Africa. We mustn't forget that this business and this phenomenon we're seeing in West Africa is just next door, and nothing stops it from coming. Already in Nigeria, we heard about a mute of a coup in January, just a month ago. So the use of alternative ways to express the disappointment of the citizenry in what the political class is doing is something that should concern Mr. President. But more importantly, Mr. President, you have fought for democracy. It is your duty to hold on to what you fought for.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Toyo, former member of the House of Representatives, member of Movement for Credible Elections. We hope very, very soon we bring you back to the studio.
Thank you so much. Thank you too. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, we also will take a short break. Don't go away. We'll be back shortly.